We are off and rolling. I heard that maybe the sheets are printed backwards, so we're starting at 2 Samuel 1, which might be page 2 in your packet, and page 1 is actually page 2. It's opposite day.
Nice recovery,
There you go. So 2 Samuel 1, we are starting the new book here. Remember we left off, Saul takes his own life on the battlefield against the Philistines. The men of Jabesh Gilead, which was the very first town when he became king that he went in and rescued. As much as the Philistines try to desecrate his body, remember they cut off the head, they put the body up on the wall, they take him down and they give him a proper burial. Not to say he deserved a proper burial, but they have respect and honor for the king. And what we're going to see today in these first couple chapters, especially this first chapter, it's just remarkable how David, considering all Saul has put him through, been on the run for how long now, literally throwing spears at the guy, trying to kill him, the respect he has for the king, the respect he has for the office, the respect, and the things he says about Saul in chapter 1 are just, you wouldn't even know Saul did what he did. I mean, he talks about him like he's just the cat's meow. And I think just maybe a lesson there on love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. We'll see. We'll let David do the talking for himself. So, all right, chapter 1. Let's do 1 through 16 first. This is kind of an interesting little introduction to the book. Someone want to do that? Thank you. Whole sheet here? Yeah, 1 through 16.
After the death of Saul, when David had returned from defeating the Amalekites, he stayed at Ziklag for 2 days. And on the third day, a man arrived from Saul's camp. His clothing was torn, and there was dirt on his head. When he approached David, he fell to the ground and bowed down to him. David said to him, "Where are you coming from?" He answered, "I have escaped the camp of Israel." David said to him, "What was the outcome? Tell me." The man said, "The people fled from the battle. Many of the people were struck down and died. Even Saul and his son Jonathan had died." David said to the young man who was talking to him, "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?" The young man who was talking to him said, "I happened to be on Mount Gilboa. There I saw Saul leaning on his spear. The chariots and the charioteers were closing in on him. When Saul looked behind him, he saw me and called to me, and I answered, 'I am here.' He said to me, 'Who are you?' I said to him, 'I am an Amalekite.' Saul said to me, 'Please stand beside me and put me to death. I am losing consciousness, but I am still alive.' So I stood beside him and ended his life because I knew that he could not live after being so severely wounded. I took the crown on his head and the armlet of his arm, and I brought them here to my lord." David and all the men with him grabbed their clothing and tore it. Until evening they mourned, wept, and fasted for Saul, for his son Jonathan, for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. David asked the young man who had told him about Saul, "Where are you from?" He said, I am an Amalekite who lives here as an alien." David asked him, "Why are you not afraid to stretch out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" David called to one of the young men, "Come here, kill him." He struck him down and he died. David said to him, "Your blood will be on your own head, because your own mouth testified against you when you said, 'I have killed the Lord's anointed.'"
Okay. So remember, David is over Ziklag's in the territory of the Philistines. David had gone over there to live for 18 months. He was doing those little raiding parties all the time down south with the Amalekites. And when the Philistines went off to fight Israel, David was ready to go and kind of be covert. He was going to eventually strike the Philistines from behind. And the Philistine king wanted him to come with Achish, but the generals said, "No, we don't trust this David guy. I think it's best he stays home." So remember, while he was gone, the Amalekites had come and they had raided. They had taken his wives. And then David, with his mighty men, went and got it all back. And so that's what it's talking about when it says he had returned from defeating the Amalekites. So now this guy comes, this Amalekite, who I have escaped from the camp, and he gives David an account of what happened. Yet, if you go back to 1 Samuel 31, turn back a few pages. If someone wants to read verses 3 through 6, chapter 31, last chapter of 1 Samuel. Someone have that?
The attack directed at Saul was fierce. The archer targeted him and hit him, and he was seriously wounded. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through with it, so that these uncircumcised fellows cannot come and run me through and abuse me." But his armor bearer would not do it because he was too afraid. So Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul died together with his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and all his men, all on that same day.
Okay, so you see a little different account, right? From 1 Samuel 31 versus what this guy comes back and reports to David in 2 Samuel 1. What do you notice is different? What does the guy say to David here in second? I did it, yeah. He was just about dead, and he didn't want to be abused by uncircumcised heathen people. So I stood over, and almost like this is a noble thing, right? I killed him, and what is he saying to David? Look at what I did. What do you think the motive was of this Amalekite guy?
Look good to David? Did
Yeah.
you know that David's the next king?
Yeah, I'm on your side, man. I did it. I killed your enemy and brought back his jewelry and stuff, and here you go. What was
He's gonna
David's
have
response?
a high position in the
Yeah,
court
maybe
or
looking out
something.
for himself. Hey,
Yeah.
I scratch your back, you scratch mine. You got any place in the cabinet or something? Can I be a leader in the army? Or, who knows what's all going on? But definitely this idea of I did a good thing by taking out Saul, even though the story was totally fabricated. What was David's response?
Apparently this guy didn't know how he felt about the office of the king.
Right. So David says, "How dare you end the life of the Lord's anointed? That's not you don't get to just kill the king of Israel." And David has him executed on the spot. Remember, David's not real shy about killing people or having them killed. We saw that a lot in 1 Samuel. So just this, and it kind of some of these questions all sort of go together. I think number 2, what response did he expect? Probably that David would reward him. Good job. Thank you for finally getting rid of this thorn in my flesh. Saul. 3, we kind of talked about. You don't get to end the life of the Lord's anointed. Number 6, maybe skip down to 6. How does the Amalekites' attitude reflect that of the world, and how does David's attitude towards Saul serve as a model for us to follow?
Oh, it's really good. Okay. Second page.
Maybe the philosophy of the enemy of my enemy is my friend is not a good one.
But yeah, he said the philosophy, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. David's attitude is what toward him?
He's my king.
He's my king. And again, that's really the amazing part in this chapter, and this song he's going to sing next. And he hasn't forgotten about all the stuff Saul did, all the times he was on the run, all the times he was in hiding, all the literal threats on his life when he was trying to kill him. And yet none of that matters to David right now. He was the king. He was the Lord's anointed. And he just is so sad. Why he'd be sad for Jonathan, because they were real, they were like this. Jonathan recognized he was the next king. Jonathan loved him. He loved Jonathan. They were very, very close, best of friends. But to have that same attitude toward his dad, it was just a jerk. Didn't matter. He's the Lord's anointed.
It's sort of like your family. Sometimes you love them, but you don't like them.
You don't like what they do, but they're still your fan. Yeah, that's a good
It's the same
illustration.
thing with respect and authority.
Yeah, I don't always like what they do. But God has put them there for a reason. So. Yeah, love your enemies. Sometimes that might even be people in authority, and yet the command is still love is the fulfillment of the law. So I think that we just kind of answered number 5 too, right? We've talked about this plenty in the last couple of years with our attitude toward government, and don't always like what they do, maybe don't even agree sometimes with what they do, and there are means by which we can go about trying to change that, but there's still those who God has put in authority. There's still no authority except that which God has established. So I think David is a great example. If David can be like this towards Saul, knowing the history there, I certainly can have a respect for the office the way soon-to-be King David did for the guy who was trying to throw a spear through his chest on more than one occasion. Anything else on the first 16 verses? One of the ironies here on the top of that sheet, recall how Saul had been given the task of eradicating the Amalekites. If you go back to 1 Samuel 15, how interesting that some of the people responsible for this battle at the end here were the people he should have gotten rid of in the first place. Maybe a lesson on, maybe if you listen to God, things go better for you. All right, well, now this just fascinating song, this lament of David for Saul and Jonathan. 17 through the end of the chapter. Who's got that for me? Karen, you want to do it?
Okay. David took up this lament concerning Saul and his son Jonathan, and ordered that the men of Judah be taught this lament as a bow. It is written in the book of Jasher. Your glory, O Israel, lies slain on your heights, how the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines be glad, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised rejoice. O mountains of Gilboa, may you have neither dew nor rain, nor fields that yield offerings of grain, for there the shield of the mighty have defiled, the shield of Saul no longer rubbed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the flesh of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, the sword of Saul did not return unsatisfied. Saul and Jonathan in life, they were loved and gracious, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, who adorned your garments with ornaments of gold. How the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. How the mighty have fallen, the weapons of war have perished.
Yeah. And again, though this whole thing might make sense if it was just Jonathan. You can see why David would say this about Jonathan. But the things he says about Saul in here just makes you kind of say, wow, this guy truly had a amazing respect for the king, in spite of the king being who he was as a person. One of the things that caught your attention is that book of Jasher, the book of Jasher. It does come up one other time in the book of Joshua. And, this isn't to say that it's a missing Bible book or something, but it seems as if, this was a well-known book that just because there was a book doesn't mean it had to be a book in the Bible. So apparently the book of Jasher was a book where different songs, and we have song books too, hymnals and things like that. So it seemed to be something that was a collection of songs, collection of poems, collection of things like that. So we do hear about it twice in the Old Testament. In the books of Kings, it talks about this is written in the annals of the kings. And there too, it seems like there was books, that was like a history book almost that no one has ever found, but at the time, it seems as if it was pretty well known. If you want to look this up, this is where you can find more history on this. And somewhere over history, they went away, which maybe goes to show how special it is that we have this. Think of how many books have been preserved from 3,000 years ago. Yeah, we have 66 of them. 2,000 from the New Testament, or 27 of them from the New Testament, and 39 from the Old. That lasted. It goes to the inspiration. Right? God wanted these things to be preserved. God saw to it that these books were preserved, which is a Bible story for a different day, a Bible study for a different day. To your sheets. In what sense did the glory of the Lord, the glory of Israel, lay slain on Mount Gilboa? When you heard in verse 19, your glory, O Israel, lies slain on your heights. How the mighty have fallen. What is he equating with the glory of Israel?
That he represented Israel?
Yeah, these people he put in charge, right? The king and his son, these leaders, these generals, the army of the Lord, right? These people who represent us. This is the glory of Israel, and now they're all gone. They're all dead. And they died at the hands of who? The Philistines, right? This pagan, heathen people, worshiping their gods, Dagon, and their false gods. And what a tragedy, David says. Why did he not want the report to be heard in Gath or Ashkelon? What's the point of that? Tell it not there, lest what? Verse 20?
They will rejoice.
Yeah.
Celebrate.
Yeah, we don't want God's enemies doing victory dances on the graves of the Israelites. Right? This is a sad day. The enemies of the Lord and of his people should not be afforded the opportunity to do a victory lap when God's anointed has been struck down. Psalm 137 talks about that. Let's just, for the fun of it, let's turn there while it's in my head. Psalm 137. Well, it's not on your sheets, but talking about the enemy rejoicing over the demise of God's people. And we'll see what God has to think about that. It's a shorter psalm. If someone want to read Psalm 137. Here it's talking about the Babylonians. Okay, go ahead.
Beside the rivers of Babylon, there we sat, and yes, we wept as we remembered Zion. There we hung up our lyres on the willows, because there our captors asked us for words of a song, and our tormentors asked for a happy song. Sing for us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing a song of the Lord on foreign soil? If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget how to play music. May my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you. If I do not exalt Jerusalem above my highest joy. Remember the day of Jerusalem, O Lord, against the descendants of Edom, who said, tear it down to its foundations. Daughter of Babylon, doomed to be destroyed. How blessed is the one who repays you with the same deeds you did against us. How blessed is the one who seizes your children and dashes them against the cliff.
Yeah, verses 8 and 9 are one of the toughest two verses in the Old Testament, right? Talk about the judgment of God. You dance and rejoice over God's people's demise. Happy be the one who takes your children and throws them against the rocks. You think, ooh, you sure you mean that, God? This is a God of judgment, right? A God of, you don't talk like that about my precious people, my chosen people. It is his to avenge, he will repay. So to the point of David doesn't want this word getting out, even though I'm sure it did, but let's try to keep their rejoicing to a minimum when it comes to God's people being defeated.
A lot of music in the Bible.
A lot of music all over the place.
Yeah, somehow music is important.
Yeah. Yeah, nowadays we turn on the radio or whatever. Yeah, back then you'd think everywhere you went, it probably would have been, maybe not everywhere, but music in the background, people playing instruments. You see that in the old movies, right? They're at the marketplace, there's always some kind of music, they're playing their harp or zither or whatever, wind instruments, and dancing around, people, just a very musical culture, where we don't maybe do that as much personally, but our equivalent today is, hey, you turn on the radio, have it in the background. Yeah, very, very musical. The gift of music.
Even the Babylonians wanted to hear
Right,
a
sing
song.
for us one of your Jewish songs. Sing a happy one. How can we be happy when we're in captivity and the temple's been destroyed? We can't be happy right now. 3, we've kind of talked about, right? How did David show a godly spirit as he laments Saul and Jonathan's death? I mean, what are some things he says here that really make you say, whoa, how can he say this about Saul? Pick out a couple sections that Karen read there.
Verse 23 says
Yeah.
Saul and Jonathan were the most loved
Right.
and admired.
They were so good. They were so admired. And man, they were swifter than eagles, stronger than lions. They were so gracious. What do you mean they? They? Jonathan, yes, they. Weep for Saul. He clothed you in scarlet. He adorned your garments with gold. How the mighty have fallen.
Notice he didn't say, what a great godly person he was.
He does stay away from that. Yeah.
He
Doesn't
said,
talk about his faith at all.
yeah.
Kind of dances around it.
he gave them scarlet and luxury.
Yeah, kind of the
Gold.
worldly stuff. Yeah. But he also doesn't say, you know what? Good. He got what was coming to him. That guy was a jerk, and I'm glad they finally got him. Jonathan, I miss that guy. Saul, finally. No. Yeah, we talked about 4. How about 5? Your neighbor has constantly harassed you, made your life miserable. Maybe you've lived that life with someone. But then he's diagnosed with cancer. He's unable to work. In a tangible way, how could you show that you've forgiven him and love him, even though he might regard you as his enemy?
What was one?
Okay. Something that's simple. Hey, can I help you out?
Yeah. Express your concern, your.
Shovel your driveway or something?
Yeah.
It's real simple. I don't have to go give you a big kiss. And that's something to bring a meal. Bring him a meal. Yeah. Talk about heaping burning coals on his head. Remember that passage from Rome? And doing this, when you pray for those who persecute you, you will heap burning coals on their head. There's an example where the rubber meets the road as a Christian, and I can really go out of my way to show Christian love to this person. We were not on the same team. We were definitely enemies, but I want him in heaven. So, what small things can I do to show the love of Jesus? I think David would give a thumbs up to that. How about number 6? How do trust in God and love for one's neighbor go hand in hand?
God says, love your enemies, be good to those that persecute you.
And you trust what?
If God asks us to do it, then that's what we're supposed to do.
Might not feel right. You might have people say, "Why do you like that?" Why do you care about that person after all they've done to you? Why do you try to love that person? That doesn't make sense to the world to act like that to your enemies. Well, we are not of the world, are we? We're in the world. We're not of the world. Why does it make sense that Jesus did what he did for us? Talked about someone who was an enemy. Talked about that today. Right? While we were still while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Paul, this is a present. While we were still doing this was ongoing. It's not like we had stopped and Jesus, okay, now that you stopped, now I can die for you. While we were still sinners. While we still are sinners. Christ died for us. I think you get the point. David's faith, David's respect, maybe even love for Jonathan and Saul. Okay, well, let's do chapter 2. So we're not to the point of the divided kingdom yet. That's going to come after Solomon dies, and yet we still do have a little division that happens here for a couple years before David takes over everything. We're going to have 2 different kings set up here for just a short bit. So chapter 2, 1 through 11. We got some names here we'll have to kind of work out. 2, 1 through 11. Tom's got that. So remember, David's still over by the Philistines. He's still over in Ziklag.
After this, David asked the Lord, "Should I go up into one of the cities of Judah?" The Lord said to him, "Go up." And David said, "Where shall I go up?" The Lord said, "To Hebron." So David went there with his 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel, and Abigail of Carmel, who was Nabal's widow. David also brought along the men who were with him, each man together with his household, and they settled in the towns around Hebron. The men of Judah came there and anointed David to be king over the house of Judah. David was told, "The men of Jabesh Gilead are the ones who buried Saul." So David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead and said to them, "You are blessed by the Lord because you performed this act of mercy and faithfulness for your master, Saul, by burying him. Now may the Lord deal with you with mercy and faithfulness. I also will treat you well because you have done this. Now let your hands be strong and courageous, for your master Saul is dead, and the house of Judah has anointed me to be king over them. However, Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, to Manaam and made him king over Gilead Ashuri, and Jezreel over Ephraim, Benjamin, and all Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned for 2 years. But the house of Judah followed David. David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah for 7 years and 6 months.
Okay, pause there. So Hebron, this is the only, remember Abraham was a sojourner even in the promised land. It was given more to his ancestor or to his descendants, but Hebron, he did have a plot of land he actually owned in Hebron. And buried in Hebron was Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Leah. So some pretty important Old Testament figures were all buried in Hebron in Judah there. Number one, what was God teaching David by directing him to Hebron, where he was only anointed king over the house of Judah? Remember back in 1 Samuel 16, Samuel had anointed him next king. Bring out the kids, and not that one, not that one. And is there any others? Well, there's the shepherd boy back. He's the youngest. You don't really want him. Let me see him. That's the one. And yet here, go to Hebron. And he gets to Hebron in the tribe of Judah, which is his tribe. Remember Bethlehem, Judah. They anoint him king over Judah. What is God teaching David? Still. It's been a bunch of chapters of teaching him this.
What was the question?
What is God teaching David here? We're just Judah for now.
He's not king of everyone.
Yeah, like patient, yeah. It's in God's time. It'll happen. Go to
Baby
Hebron.
steps.
Yeah, and maybe is it? David seems to be kind of a get after it type guy. I think of some of the bloodshed that's happened in 1 Samuel, and just trust in me. Trust me, David. Right now, Judah, and now it's going to be. Now you got Ishbosheth, son of Saul. He's king everywhere else, basically. You got David and Judah, and Ishbosheth is king up here and over here and down here. And you say, well, if you're David, maybe, no, I'm the next king. Forget this. Let's get my mighty men and let's attack and let's take the throne by force. I deserve it because Samuel had anointed me, and just go to Hebron. Okay. And they anoint him king over Judah. Okay.
So is that a lesson for us that,
Yeah, how? Go ahead.
well, that when God gives us something, let's not say, why not the whole thing? Wait for his time.
Yeah, I mean, how many of God's promises, he's, all things work out for your good. Okay, and then it doesn't seem like it. It will. Just go to Hebron, be anointed king there. The rest of it I'll work out when it's time to work it out. We don't have the promises he specifically gave David as far as this or that when it comes to earthly things the way David had. And yet we can think of many of his promises where it will happen in my time. And sometimes whoever I was talking to, give me patience now. Just be patient. And when it happens, it'll happen.
That's your favorite one, isn't it?
I thought at first it was like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and thought maybe the larger group overstepped their bounds and made somebody else a king, and David was supposed to have been supposedly.
It seems like as we read this that Abner, who was he was Saul's cousin. Yeah, cousin. It seems like Abner, even though he's the military guy, is kind of acting as king. And Ishbosheth is sort of just the figurehead because he was Saul's son. And we're going to get to that here in the next section. It makes sense, I guess, that how much did everybody know that David was supposed to be the next king?
Yeah.
Perhaps not as much as you would think. David knew.
Yeah.
The people of Judah knew. How much did that get up to, over to Gilead? How much did that get up, into what will be Galilee one day? It seems like perhaps they didn't. And it just made sense to, okay, here's Saul's son, and we'll
Yeah.
put him on the throne next. And God doesn't say to David, now go take that throne, it's yours. And there's gonna be eventually Saul's line will weaken, David's line will strengthen, and it's just gonna naturally happen where David becomes king over all of Israel and not just Judah.
Yeah, so with God not telling him to do that, it's like, well, it appears then this is the way it was supposed to happen.
And you don't have God saying to the other people, why would you anoint Ishbosheth your king when you know David was supposed to be king? One would think if you put a king on the throne who God didn't want, he would have made
Would have
clear
been
that
rebuked or
I'm not gonna let
something.
this happen, yeah, so.
Alright.
So you got David and his wives, the men with him, so they go to Hebron. He's gonna end up reigning in Hebron for, what did it say, 7 years and 6 months. He has a lot of, prophecy, if you wanna call it that, a blessing on these people at Jabesh Gilead who took care of Saul's corpse and gave him that burial. May the Lord show kindness to you for what you've done to the Lord's anointed. And then we talked about Abner a little bit, the commander of Saul's army. Let's keep, let's see on the sheets here.
How do we think God talked to David?
That's a
Do-
great
do
question,
we-
yeah.
Do
I was-
we have any thoughts?
I mean, we had heard earlier about the whole Urim and Thummim thing that, Abiathar the priest, he had with him, and was it one of those where he asked a lot of yes or no questions, and basically the Urim and Thummim seems to be like if it's, let's say, black means no and white means yes, and you pick it out and okay. That could be one way. Today we would maybe draw lots, or I don't know what you do today, flip a coin, something like that, but with the trust here. So would you do that today? Let's take, for example, I don't know, we're talking about calls right now, what the call I have. Could you, here's our call list, here's 4 guys, and just pick a name out of that. Pray, God, help us pick the right one. Okay, amen. Pick the name out of that. Okay, it's this guy. Could you do that?
How much you wanna bet the churches have done that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could.
Well,
I don't think it'd be a
before
sin,
all this
right?
information could be made available to them
Yeah.
in this technical world.
Yeah.
Back in time.
I mean, it kind of makes sense the way we do it, where you get, now you don't get a ton of information. Okay, here's kind of their biography, and are they married? Do they have kids? Where's their strengths? But, yeah, you go back how many years, you didn't have all that, where here's what the spreadsheet spit out regarding Pastor so-and-so. Probably it was just some names on a list, right? Pick one. So back to your question, it seems as if maybe that was one way of, did he like dreams and things like that? We're not really told that he talked to him that way, so I lean more toward the whole Urim and Thummim thing. I suppose he could have talked to him in dreams or visions, but you'd think it would have maybe told us that.
Certainly a lot more succinct with David than he was with Samuel.
Yeah.
Should I go up? Go
Yes.
up. Where?
Well, it's
To
a lot
Hebron.
of, right. Should I go to Hebron or to Jerusalem? Hebron. Yes, no, yes, no. A or B, A or B.
D, none of the above, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't Hebron have been more of a notice city because it was such a.
Because of who has all been buried there,
It was a
yeah.
popular
Right.
trade route and such, so
Right.
you would be noticed quicker
Right.
in Hebron than in
As opposed to Bethlehem, which would make sense, you go to
Good
Bethlehem.
point.
You just
Um,
made a new word. Quicker.
Bethlehem being his hometown, maybe that was the question, should I go to Hebron or Bethlehem? Bethlehem's the town of David. If that was the Urim and Thummim question from what you said, yeah, I mean, Hebron. Bethlehem's just a little podunk village outside it, nothing's going on in Bethlehem. We think of Bethlehem, we think, Bethlehem, back then Bethlehem was, you were small, remember? You Bethlehem Ephrathah, though, you are small among the clans of Judah. You are an insignificant little bird. But out of
Good
you.
place to hide him from the devil.
Yeah. Which makes sense too. The king of the Jews is born in Bethlehem. shouldn't this happen in Jerusalem? Why in Bethlehem? Anything else here? I think we kind of talked about all that. Yeah, to your point, Tom, number 4, do any of us have difficult decisions to make? Maybe a lesson from David. You know, a chance to pray, a chance to think, a chance to consult with God's word. We're maybe not going to probably won't get yes or no answers the way David did, as far as directly do this, or should I buy this house or that house? Maybe they're both okay, right? It doesn't really, but think about it, pray about it. You consider the different factors that go into it. Can you afford this? Is this going to cause a problem here? Is this going to, what's best? Thinking of spiritual things also, and the other responsibilities one might have. Okay, good. 2 Samuel 2:12 through, we'll split this in half, 12 through 23. So you got Abner is on the Saul team, and Joab, who is actually David's nephew. We're going to get some of the other names of David's nephews here. And it seems like these guys are almost as old as David, but if his sister, remember David was the youngest, if his sister was that much older, that would perhaps make sense that he had these people who are his nephews that are kind of not too much younger than him, because he was that much younger than his sister, whose kids they are. So 12 through 23. Okay, thanks.
Abner said to Joab, "The young men should get up and compete in front of us." Joab said, "Yes, let them do so." So 12 representatives for Benjamin and Ishbosheth, son of Saul, got up and crossed over to confront 12 representatives for David. Each one grabbed his opponent's head and thrust his sword into his side. Together they all fell. So that place, which is near Gibeon, was called Helkath Hatzerim. A fierce battle took place that day. Abner and the men of Israel were beaten by the followers of David. 3 sons of Zeruiah
That's David's sister.
were there, namely Joab, Abishai, and Ashel. Asahel was a
Easy for
fast
you to
runner.
say.
Yeah. Was a fast runner. I gotta be careful with that one.
Yeah.
Was a fast runner, like one of the gazelles out in the fields. Asahel pursued Abner and did not turn aside to the right or to the left from his pursuit. Abner looked behind him and said, "Is that you, Asahel?" He said, "Yes, it is." Abner said to him, "Turn to your right hand or to your left and capture one of the young men for yourself and strip off his equipment for yourself." But Asahel would not turn aside. So Abner warned him again, "Turn aside, stop following me. Why should I strike you to the ground? How could I face Joab, your brother?" But Asahel refused to turn aside, so Abner struck him in the stomach with the pointed butt of his spear. The spear came out his back, and he fell down and died right there. Everyone stopped and just stood there when they came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died.
Okay. So we have Abner and Joab kind of on opposite sides here, and literally in verse 13 they are on opposite sides at the pool of Gibeon. One sat down on one side and one on the other. And what's their first suggestion to try to get this whole thing all figured out? It seems like they're maybe trying to make like a treaty, a peace, like, okay, you got Ishbosheth, you got David, you got Abner, you got Joab. They come together at the pool. We're on opposite sides. We're maybe trying to get this all figured out, and the suggestion is,
Instead of having the kings fight, let's pick some people to fight for us.
you pick 12 and I'll pick 12. Kind of like the David and Goliath thing, right? We'll pick our champion, and you guys pick your champion, come out and try to beat him, and whoever wins, wins. And what happens? Who won?
They equally all died.
What happens if they all kill each other? So that didn't work. on your sheets there. Fight hand to hand on the top of your last sheet. The word literally means to play or wrestle. What's meant by hand to hand combat. Each side, 12 champions to fight. How their conflict ended would determine a winner. Think of Goliath. Well, what happened here is they ended up stabbing each other to death.
Almost have to do it.
So then a battle does start, and we're told David's men soundly defeated the men of Ishbosheth and Abner. We get the names of these three sons. We already talked about Joab, and then Abishai and Asahel are the other brothers, so these are all David's nephews. Apparently Asahel was pretty quick on his feet, chasing Abner down. And number 3, seems like Abner was a man of peace. Give some examples of that from this section.
He clearly didn't want to kill
I
the
don't-
man pursuing him.
I don't want to have to kill you. Please stop chasing me. Go that way. Just stop chasing me.
So they are having this conversation while they're still running.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah, is he in his
That seems-
chariot kind of yelling backwards? Or, you're going to die.
Somebody run
I'm telling
backwards.
you. I don't want to have to answer to your brother when I kill you. But he just refuses to stop. Okay. This is what happens in war and battle. Sticks the spear right through his.
It's like later, Abner calls a ceasefire, or wants to call a ceasefire.
Right, so let's finish the section, then we can maybe talk more. 24 through the end of the chapter. 24 through 32. Want to go who hasn't read yet? Or Charlie wants to do it? All right. Or Jan?
Yeah, but,
Fight with each other.
uh,
Your champion and my champion.
Your sharp stick.
Jan,
I'm
cede
the
it to
one that's
Jan. Go
running
ahead.
forward, yeah. Joab and Abishai kept pursuing Abner. The sun was going down when they came to the hill of Ammah in front of Giah, on the way to the wilderness of Gibeon. The Benjaminites rallied together behind Abner, joined in one formation, and took their stand on the top of one hill. Abner called to Joab, "Will the sword continue to devour? Do you not know that it will be bitter when all this is over? How long will you delay telling the people to stop pursuing their brothers?" Joab said, "As God lives, if you had not spoken, surely it would have been morning before the people would have given up pursuing their brothers." So Joab blew the ram's horn, and all the people stopped pursuing Israel. They did not continue to fight. Abner and his men traveled through the Arabah all that night. They crossed the Jordan, marched through the entire region of Bithron, and came to Mahanaim. Joab returned from pursuing Abner and gathered together all his troops. Besides Asahel, 19 of David's men were missing. The followers of David had struck dead 360 of Abner's men from the tribe of Benjamin. The men of Judah picked up Asahel and buried him in the tomb of his father at Bethlehem. Joab and his men marched all night and arrived at Hebron as it was becoming light.
Okay. So yeah, another example of Abner. Can't we just stop? This is going to end in bitterness. Why are we fighting? We're all brothers here. We're all related. And this makes sense to Joab. Blows the trumpet, comes to a halt, nor did they fight anymore. Now this is just going to get more and more interesting over the next few chapters between Abner and Joab and Ishbosheth. And Abner's going to kind of go over to David's side. Joab's going to murder Abner. Ishbosheth's going to get murdered. So it's going to be all sorts of people dying left and right who we hear about here. This is kind of just setting the foundation for these guys we're going to hear about over the next 2-3 chapters.
The lack thereof.
Yeah, so it seems like Abner, even though he's like on Saul's side, is the one who gets it. He's kind of a good guy. He need peace, and why are we fighting? And let's just figure this out. Maybe diplomacy. Let's come to some kind of peace treaty. Where Joab, and there's the one, get him, chase him, get him, kill him. So even though they're David's relatives, seems here Abner's the one who's in the right. And the fourth question, have you ever had similar situations where someone wants to harm you or make your life miserable? So you're Abner and you got Joab coming after you. What are some things you can do to bring about peace?
So the maintenance department and purchasing seldom get along
Okay.
in a factory or a mill.
Okay.
And I had a maintenance manager once who just was, I heard through others that he was kind of down, talking to purchasing people and me and everybody.
Yeah.
So I finally just went and had a talk with him one-on-one and said, "What's wrong?"
Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
We're on the same team here.
Yeah,
Did it work? Kinda, sort of?
kinda, yeah, that one worked.
Yeah.
Other times, not so much, but that
Who are
one
you to
worked.
talk to me that way?
That one-
Let's just turn the fire down a little bit here. If you make their job miserable, they make your job miserable, and nobody wins.
So what I tried to do is ask him, what should I, what do you want me to do? What can we do
Let's be,
that we're not doing for you right now?
Yeah.
How can we do better?
instead of talking behind people, let's just, yeah, let's be adults here. How can we figure this out? What's going on? Good, yeah. Anything else? All right, well, we're getting to the point where David's gonna be king, but not quite yet. We got some drama roads to go down before that happens. Nothing's easy for David. And again, doesn't this all, I keep going back to this, but when you read the Psalms, especially when you read the Psalms of David, it makes sense why he says the things he says. You know, it seems like my enemies are winning, I'm always pursued, and where will my help come from? And he always goes back to, whom have I in heaven but you? At the end of the day, I have you, Lord, and the rest of it's gonna work itself out, as long as you're on my side. You can understand David's heart when he wrote those songs, as he was constantly being patient, constantly waiting for the Lord. And it seems like perhaps his enemies are winning more battles than he is. All right, well, very good. So what else is going on this week? We got church meal, council meal this week, soup and sandwich.
Men's Bible study.
Men's Bible study is our last one until January. So we meet Tuesday night at 6:30. No, 6. Well, we start at 6:30. Get to the ranch whenever you get there. Women are Malachi, so we're on the second chapter of Malachi.
Breakfast on Tuesday?
Breakfast this Tuesday. Where are you at this? No, next
Tuesday.
Tuesday. This is still November. Next.
Oh, not this one.
Where you at this next month?
Oh.
Where you at?
Olympic.
Olympia or whatever. Yeah. North side.
Just down for the brewery.
Oh.
Christmas tree is this weekend, I assume. This coming Saturday.
Big blue and white sign or something?
All right, well, let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you as we read the first section of 2 Samuel here. A lot of lessons to be learned, lessons from David on a spirit of respect and patience and humility, and loving your enemies, praying for those who persecute you. We ask you to give us a heart like that. Certainly it's not always easy. We know the devil uses enemies to try to upend our faith, try to get our goad, try to make us doubt you and doubt your love, and try to make that person the person we're against rather than the devil who's trying to stir up all the ruckus in the first place. Remind us that our enemy is not flesh and blood. It's the kingdom of the air who's doing his evil work. And remind us that too is someone that you died for and someone you want to see in heaven just as much as you want to see us in heaven. Bless us this Advent season. May our house always be clean. We know it is in the blood of Jesus. May we do our best not to dirty it up as we put aside the thoughts and actions of our sinful nature and dress ourselves in the robe of righteousness Christ won for us. In his name we pray. Amen. All right.